Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. In a small church outside Seattle, a quiet pastor pressed record. And what followed changed everything. What if a man long gone could speak again? Not through superstition, but through energy, through echoes of truth that refused to die. Tonight on Update X24H, we uncover the story of faith meeting fear, of science colliding with the supernatural, and of one voice that whispered from beyond. They silenced me, but not my truth. Stay until the end, because this time it's not just about death. It's about what still lives inside the silence. Pastor Jonathan Reed had spent most of his life helping people find peace through prayer, not through miracles or myths. He was a quiet man, known more for compassion than curiosity, the kind of person who would rather listen to others' pain than talk about his own. Yet one evening, a message arrived that defied everything he believed in. It came from an encrypted email, unsigned, untraceable, and chillingly brief. It said only, "The soul of you Menglong cannot rest. He must speak." For days Reed ignored it, convincing himself it was some cruel prank or an overzealous fan chasing a ghost story. But when a set of blurry, fragmented videos followed, something in him changed. He saw a man's face, young, frightened, desperate, staring directly into the camera. That moment broke through the boundaries of faith and reason. He didn't see a ghost, he saw a soul pleading for truth. Reed's instincts told him that whatever this was, it wasn't about superstition, it was about redemption. He began to feel a strange responsibility, as though the message had chosen him. The thought of a person dying without justice haunted him. A lifetime spent preaching about compassion and salvation meant nothing if he turned away from a cry like this. He spent nights in silence, watching the flicker of a candle, asking himself whether faith could exist without courage. Was his duty to God limited to the living, or did it also extend to those whose voices had been stolen? When he finally agreed to hold the ritual, it wasn't to summon the dead but to listen, to give one lost spirit a chance to be heard. In his small, dimly lit church, he prepared not a performance but a prayer. There were no grand gestures, no cameras, only his trembling hands and an unwavering belief that truth deserved to be found, even if it came from the darkest corners of existence. He whispered into the silence, "If this man suffered, his truth will not remain buried." That night, Jonathan Reed crossed a threshold few dared to approach. His act was not one of defiance but of devotion, a quiet offering of faith to a voice that refused to fade. Midnight arrived with a stillness that felt unnatural, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Inside the small church basement, the air grew dense and heavy, thick with a kind of tension that words could not capture. Pastor Reed had lit only a few candles, their flames trembling against the stone walls like fragile hearts about to stop beating. On the wooden table before him lay the recorder, a circle of salt, and a silver cross that reflected the flickering light. Beside him sat two companions who had agreed to join, not out of faith, but out of curiosity. Catherine, once a forensic audio analyst, believed that every sound carried truth if you listen closely enough. Michael, a linguist who had studied forgotten languages and ancient rituals, wanted to translate whatever might be said from the other side. None of them truly believed a voice would come. And yet, beneath that disbelief, each felt the same unease, the same strange pulse in the room that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. When Reed whispered the first line of prayer, the temperature dropped suddenly, as if the warmth had been pulled from the walls. The candles flickered harder, the flame of one bending sideways as though bowing to something unseen. Then came the sound, a click sharp and precise. The recorder had turned itself on. Reed froze, his hand hovering above the cross. No one had touched it. Static filled the room, a low hum that deepened into a rhythm, like breathing through static. And then, faint but human, came a whisper that sliced through the cold. "Don't let them silence me." The three stared at one another, disbelief and fear mirrored in their eyes. The voice was not mechanical, not digital, not a glitch. It was fragile, trembling, almost childlike in its pain. Then came another fragment, soft but unmistakable. They made me smile. The words carried the weight of something unbearable, a confession buried in sorrow. Reed felt the air tighten around him, pressing against his chest. The candles seemed to recoil, their flames shrinking back as if afraid. He closed his eyes, clutching the cross, realizing this was not merely a haunting. It was a cry for truth, breaking through the veil of death to reach the living. The words, "They made me smile," echoed through the room like a wound reopened, haunting in its simplicity. To the three who listened, it was no longer the voice of a stranger. It was a mirror reflecting the cruelty hidden beneath the gloss of fame. Pastor Reed realized, with a heavy ache in his chest, that what they were hearing was not a tale of ghosts, but of humanity twisted by power. The smile the voice spoke of was not joy, not even pretense. It was survival. It was the forced expression of a man who had been broken and yet commanded to look perfect. It was the kind of smile that hides suffering so deep it becomes almost invisible, even to those who claim to love you. The static that followed the words pulsed like a heartbeat, fragile and rhythmic, as if the spirit itself was breathing between worlds. Catherine adjusted the recorder's frequency, trying to capture the pattern beneath the noise. What emerged next chilled her to the bone. Faint traces of music, the muffled rhythm of applause, and behind it, the sound of someone whispering instructions. "Look at the camera, smile again." The line blurred between performance and torment. Each word from the voice carried the despair of a man trapped in an illusion created by others. Reed's eyes filled with tears he didn't expect. For years, he had preached about salvation, but nothing had prepared him for this kind of suffering, one inflicted not by death, but by expectation. Menglong's pain was more than physical. It was spiritual, the agony of being consumed by an image until the man beneath it disappeared. "They painted my face. They filmed my pain. They called it art." The words were faint, but the meaning was sharp as glass. In that moment, Reed understood that this was not about haunting. It was a plea to be seen, truly seen, without the mask. The voice wasn't asking for pity, but for recognition. Even in death, your soul longed for something simple and human, to be remembered as real, not as a performance. And as the final echoes faded, Reed felt the terrible beauty of that truth, that sometimes the greatest horror isn't what hides in the dark, but what we demand others to keep hidden behind a smile. Then suddenly the recorder hissed louder, like thunder through steel. "The art place below the stairs," the voice whispered. They searched. The coordinates matched an abandoned wing of a former art museum in Beijing, once known for performance installations. There, restoration workers had recently uncovered painted canvases, not of landscapes, but of human skin tones, layered, almost lifelike. The discovery was never reported publicly, but someone wanted it to be heard through this message from the void. When faith meets science, truth often hides between them. Reed later described that night not as a haunting, but as a conversation about humanity. What he heard wasn't horror, it was hope. Menglong's spirit, or perhaps the memory of his voice, spoke of resilience. They can bury bodies but not truth. And when the sound finally faded, Reed didn't feel fear. He felt peace. Because for the first time he realized this wasn't about summoning the dead. It was about keeping their truth alive. Weeks later, Reed returned to that basement and found the recorder flashing again. A new message had appeared. Only 2 words. "Keep speaking." He understood then. This was never a ghost story. It was a reminder that silence kills and truth once spoken can set spirits and people free. In the end, what the world feared as darkness became something else entirely. Light hidden inside a whisper. Maybe Menglong's voice wasn't calling from another world. Maybe it was calling from inside ours, reminding us that empathy, courage, and truth are what make us human. If this story moved you, don't let it fade into silence. Subscribe to Update X24H, where every story seeks not only to uncover the unknown, but to remind us of what still matters. Truth, love, and the voices that never stop speaking. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most haunting sound is not a scream, but a truth the world refused to hear.